There's few things as captivating as seeing your favorite athlete perform at an elite level. Whether it's LeBron James running half courts in a matter of seconds and getting a game-changing block, or Bo Jackson running up the side of a wall seconds before catching a baseball. These feats of athleticism all share a common thread in terms of how they are conducted. So in this video, we are going to go over 5 different exercises that mimic these movements so you can start moving like your favorite athletes too. All right, we got a lot to cover, so we're going to jump straight into it. The first exercise that we are going to go over is lateral hops. So this is quite a common exercise. They are also known as skaters, and you may have seen quite a bit people attempt to perform these. I say attempt because there is a lot of moving parts that needs to happen when we start to move in this lateral plane of motion. So what we're going to start to do here is get into our split stance position. And first and foremost, we're going to get used to pushing the ground to the side. By pushing the ground to the side, we are creating an active ground tension that is preparing our body to ultimately unload that force to the other side. Ideally, when I land on the other side, I'm thinking about catching that force and then absorbing it into my body. As that force is being absorbed, I'm simultaneously pushing my foot back into the ground to propel myself the opposite way. And really what we're trying to do here is just create an interplay of tension and absorption as we jump from side to side. The important part about this type of movement is getting used to the absorption of force to make sure that our joints and things like our ligaments and tendons aren't being overcompensated through this type of movement. The more proficient we are at this absorption mechanic, the more programmed this type of range of motion as well as plane of motion is going to be programmed into our body. If you've ever played any sport, then rest assured you're aware it is certainly not one-dimensional. So being sure to get comfortable in this plane of motion will be imperative if you wish to move like your favorite athlete. Our next exercise is going to be the deceleration lunge. So for this exercise, we're going to start in our split stance. And what we are going to work on is taking a step forward, initially creating some momentum. I'm going to continue to carry that momentum through as I absorb it back into my lunge. Once I'm in the lunge, what I'm doing is decelerating the momentum, and then I'm going to try to utilize that to backstep to my starting position. And what we are doing here is getting our muscles, our tendons, and our ligaments familiar with this type of deceleration mechanism. In any sports, no matter what it is, there's tons of stopping and starting. So what we are doing here is trying to replicate some of that stopping and starting into our structure. This is quite similar to the lateral movement that we were doing previously, in the sense that we are thinking about the absorption of the force from one side to the other. But instead of the force going from side to side, all we're doing here is working it back and forth. What I would recommend working here is about 8 to 12 repetitions. And on the first set, try to go through it a little bit slower. Try not to go from 0 to 100 straight away. Kind of let your body get warmed up and adjusted to the movement. Once the body is adjusted, then we can start to amp up the speed, in which case you can just start to move through this a little bit more dynamically. For our third exercise, we are going to be working through 3D deceleration. Now that sounds vague, doesn't it? So let me show you what it looks like. So what I'm doing here is kicking my leg up, and then as my leg swings back, I'm thinking about that as kind of being the leading driver to the movement. That's going to be what I'm going to kind of follow in terms of my momentum. Once I land and kind of absorb that momentum, I'm just going to pause and try to create stability at that end range. And then essentially, I'm just going to repeat the entire cycle. So just like our previous exercise, start slow with this exercise, kind of getting used to the coordination. And then once you get the gist of it and you got your body relatively warmed up, then you can start to increase the pacing and the tempo of the exercise. For this exercise, I wouldn't focus so much on repetitions as I would for time. So what I would suggest you do here is work about a 30 to 45 second interval per side. For our fourth exercise, we are going to get into single leg hops. So grab yourself a chair, a stool, a tree, whatever it is that you have around you, and let's get into it. So for this exercise, we are going to come back to our split stance position, and we're going to start to incorporate a little bit more of a explosive motion into this. So what I'm going to do here is get everything rotated over my lead leg, and then I'm going to start to pull the ground backwards. And by doing so, I'm initiating that ground tension, just like we were doing in our previous exercise, and I'm gonna propel myself not only forwards, but also upwards. Ideally, I'm going to land on my opposite leg, and I'm going to land in a single leg fashion. And what this is doing is starting to promote some single leg stability, which is something that we would often find ourselves doing not only day to day, but especially in sport. So not only are we working on the deceleration piece, but we are also incorporating a power element into this alongside a stability element. And what we can think about is the more that I train stability, especially stability in this single leg fashion, the more transferable that is ultimately going to be into my sport. So see if you can get well adjusted with the previous exercises before progressing to this one, as it starts to add all the different elements together. For our fifth and final exercise, we are gonna work a switch lunge. So for this exercise, we are really gonna try to amplify the power output that we're gonna put into it. So just like all our exercises today, we're gonna come back to our split stance position, and we're gonna drop down into the end range of our lunge. From this bottom position, I'm going to drive my feet directly down into the ground. I'm going to propel myself up, and then I'm going to do a subtle switch of my feet as I absorb all that momentum down on the opposite side. As I am absorbing the momentum here, I'm already starting to think about moving in the opposite direction. So as soon as I absorb, I'm already thinking about the feet kind of cushioning down into the ground to propel myself right back up and then go back to the starting side. If you want to build on this exercise, you can focus not only on the legs, but also the arms. As you can see here, my arms are working as a big propeller for this movement. So my legs are initially pushing off, but my arms are kind of carrying me through into that vertical motion. This is going to assist with keeping the upper body linked and making sure that we are getting proper rotation through the upper body, which should ideally always be complementing our lower body. For this exercise, we're gonna work it for time as well, without any type of reduction in the power output. So what I would suggest is working on one of these exercises per day. As you can see, we have 5 different exercises. So take one, practice it once per day for about 15 to 20 minutes. The more you practice and the more consistent you are with these exercises, ultimately the more transferable they are going to be to your sport and overall athletic performance over time. In short, if you wish to move like your favorite athletes, then you have to practice moving how they move. So go through these movements one by one. There is a lot to break down here, so take your time and put in the work. Just like anything else, this is going to take practice. And ultimately, what you program into the body is what you are going to get out of it. If you liked this video or found it helpful, make sure to throw it a like, as well as subscribe to the channel for more future content similar to this. Until next time, make sure you are prioritizing, and then you are optimizing for you. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.